Good evening from Swansea, wrestling fans. I'm your host, Ben Allison, and you are watching Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast, your one-stop shop for professional wrestling, insight, news, and reviews on a daily basis. And today, it's Sunday, and you know what that means. It means it is Sunday Fun Day, and today is certainly going to be a fun show. We are going to be doing what we do once a month, every month, and that is creating a pound-for-pound ranking about professional wrestling. Now, I am going to go into that in a little bit more detail in just a moment, but before I do, let me introduce the panel for today's show, and let's kick things off with Clark Taylor. How are you today, Clark?
I'm stoked to be here. Happy Sunday, everybody. It's an NFL Sunday. It doesn't get much better. We've got tons of great wrestling to talk about, and who doesn't like a good list? I've got my handy dandy notebook ready to rock and roll, Ben. Let's get into it.
Absolutely. Let's jump headfirst into it. But before we do jump headfirst, let me introduce the head of opinions, Anthony Ricciardi. How are you, Anthony?
Doing all right. It's my 5th daily, 7th show overall for the week, so this should be fun.
Nice.
Clark's doing his Blues Clues impression, which is always fun. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's
one day early.
People off one more time.
Usually I'm doing Blues Clues on Mondays.
It's 24 hours early, but also joining us today, we have the head of reviews, Coby Galenzoski. How are you, Coby?
Doing pretty good. Of course, this is my first pound for pound show, and of course, I'm here to stir the pot a little bit, make you guys think, and hopefully have a good time talking about it like always. But I expect that from us, and it's always a pleasure to be here with you, Clark and Anthony.
Absolutely, it's great here to have you, Coby. But before we get into the pound for pound rankings, let me explain it very briefly, right? Now, in case you guys aren't fans of MMA, the pound for pound ranking is all divisions merged together. Basically, who is the best fighter, right? And it's always going to be, speculation based. UFC do have their own official one, but a lot of people disagree with it at times. There's always, room for opinions because, of course, you can't really have them, fighting in different divisions. It wouldn't be fair. So the idea with a wrestling version of that is all the different companies, all, different genders and everything, and one ranking. Now, the way which we do it is, it's purely based on kayfabe and results, right? It's not your match quality, it's not story, it's nothing like that. It is purely based on kayfabe and results. So that is how we do it. Now, in terms of how we can weigh certain different promotions, that's up to personal preference, right? That is a personal decision. For example, little bit of a spoiler here, but I personally, of course, NXT is a developmental brand, so I view and then weigh NXT as a developmental brand. So holding an NXT championship will mean a lot less than holding a WWE or even AEW championship. But whereas Clark, well, he might say NXT is not a developmental at this point, it's a third brand, and Ring of Honor, it's just as important. So that's also up there. It is up to personal preference, and that's where the arguments start. So let's straight away get into it, right? We're going to be doing our top 10, and I'm going to kick things off with my number 10 for this month. It is a new entry, and it is the AEW Women's Champion, Mariah May. Now, of course, she won the Owen earlier this year. She then went on at All In to win the Women's Championship in front of a packed-out Wembley Stadium crowd. Now, the only reason she's actually not a little bit higher on this list is the fact that last night she got pinned by Anna Jay, so that has hurt her slightly, but she still just about makes the top 10. And that, of course, is a new entry for me. But Clark, I'm going to go to you next. Who do you have in at number 10?
I've got an interesting one here. I've got a list full of champions except for one. And it's not this one that's not the champion. I've got Roxanne Perez at 10, NXT Women's World Champion. Deserves the spot. Pop rocks, let's go at 10. Out of the gates. Developmental that, Ben.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Clark, right? I didn't say I don't have any NXT names in my list, right? So technically speaking, I might have weighed NXT higher than you if Roxanne's at number 10. But a great choice, no doubt about it. She's having a phenomenal year. But Anthony, who do you have in the 10 slot?
I have at number 10 Mike Bailey, the reigning X Division champion of TNA. He's been on a tear all year. Put on a heck of a match last night with Takeshita. Although it was not a winning effort, he's been nailing every time he gets out there. So it's been great.
That is a great choice, no doubt about it. And also, I've got Clark your list too. Roxanne Perez down one place from last month. Meanwhile, Anthony, Mike Bailey is a new entry for you. But Coby, as you said, this is your first pound for pound ranking. So who do you have in the 10 slot?
I mean, exactly. They're all going to be new entries for me.
I mean, spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert! You gotta spoil them already. Like you said, off most times this is going to be a lot of champions, and this is going to be a champions list. But I do have one non-champion, and that is my number 10, and it's someone who kind of had a crazy year, starting off the year having a match, going to Japan for the first time and wrestling in the Tokyo Dome, having a match with Zack Sabre Jr., having a classic match with Will Ospreay. I'm going with the former AEW champion and the man who potentially just finished off his career, Bryan Danielson.
A great shout, no doubt about it. I mean, personally, Coby, I don't quite have Danielson on my list, but it's a question. I think this is interesting as well. It creates an interesting conversation about whether or not Bryan Danielson is an active competitor right now, because he says he might come back, so maybe he is. But I mean, certainly he has had a phenomenal year so far. There is no doubting that.
I mean, we can just look at the real pound for pound. John Jones is still somewhere on that
That's
list.
true.
He hasn't fought in years.
Number one, I think, isn't he?
Yep.
No, in Dana White's heart.
In our hearts.
In Dana White's heart, he's number one. But no,
he should not be.
I do believe it's Makachev.
No,
in the rankings.
I'm pretty sure it's either Islam or it's Pajeda. I think it's Pajeda. I think it's Pajeda.
I don't think it would be Alex yet, only because he moved up in weight.
And that's why I think he's ducking Aspinall. We all know that. You shouldn't be number one if you're hiding from somebody. But now let's move on.
Aspinall.
Because I do have an NXT champion in at number 9, somebody who's just been tearing through NXT's mid-card division, right? And the only reason he's not higher is the caliber of opponents who he has defeated. Well, they're not always that high, but he has defeated quite a few, veterans as well during his reign, and that is Obafemi in at number 9 for me, a new entry. What about you, Clark?
Wow. Because my number 9, if you remember correctly, when Seth Rollins beat Brock Lesnar, they called him the Beast Slayer. But this guy that I have at number 9 stopped the unstoppable force. He moved the immovable object. And that's the man that defeated Obafemi for that title, Tony D'Angelo. New entry for me at number 9.
And the great choice.
The upset of the year.
It was the upset of the year. And I think I accidentally said Obafemi was the North American champion as well during mine. Of course, he did lose it last week, but no doubt about it. Tony D, high up there indeed. Anthony, what about you? Who do you have in at number 9?
At number 9, making a debut on my list, Takeshita, the reigning international champion of AEW, put on a phenomenal performance last night with Mike Bailey, and he's been tearing it up in AEW, so he had to be on my list.
A great name, no doubt about it. Of course, like you said, he is now a champion in AEW as well. And to defeat Will Ospreay with the amount of people Will Ospreay has defeated this year, that is a hell of a feat, no doubt about it. But Coby, who do you have in at number 9?
At number 9, I mean, like you kind of said, this is pound for pound. We're talking about wins, we're talking about accolades, and we're talking about how high they are up in the card. And my number 9 is like I said, the wrestler champions, but this is a women's champion in the company WWE. And she did get pinned a few times recently, but it is Nia Jax. I mean, she's on, if I'm looking from the year, she's having the best run of her career, but she has marquee wins. She is the Queen of the Ring winner. She won the title at SummerSlam, and she retained a bad blood, and she's more than likely going to win the Crown Jewel Championship. Oh, I already spoiled a prediction, but I think that's kind of the place we are in, and I think Nia Jax does deserve to be on this list. not too high, but because of the losses. But I think she is on there.
And I think that then creates a bigger conversation as well, Kobe, because it's a great point what you said there about the losses. But do you weigh losses, pinfalls in tag team competition as high as singles competition? Maybe you
She also
do,
got pinned
maybe you
by-
don't.
She also got pinned against Naomi two weeks ago
Of course you did, yeah.
as well. But still, she is a champion. And I mean, obviously, that's where this gets mucky because, I mean, it was a non-title match.
It is. It's a difficult one. And non-title matches, like I said about Mariah May, that bumped her down slightly in my
Eliminator
in my one.
match.
Please just ban them. If you're a champion, defend the title. In whatever company it is, just defend the title. But Anthony Manzano says, I don't think a pound-for-pound ranking could work in professional wrestling. Well, of course it couldn't properly, but this is just a little bit of fun. But
I
he
feel
is
like
saying
my
that
list is working.
We've kind of been doing it for months, so I think it has been working.
I think it's working.
Number 10
look
is
who
Bianca
started it.
Belair and
Ariel
19.
Oh, look,
Helwani.
he's got 10.
Ariel Helwani started a wrestling pound for pound.
He's
we did it
copying
first.
us, Kobe. He's copying
He's
us.
a copy kitten.
Exactly.
Oh, Ariel Helwani copies us everywhere he goes. But now it's number 8, of course. And in my ranking, well, I do have a new entry. And my new entry is a champion, and it is a champion in NXT, Clark. In fact, it is Roxanne Perez, the NXT Women's Champion. She has been killing it this year, no doubt about it. Like I said about Obafemi too, caliber of opponents, I think, is something, consider. Of course, Roxanne did defeat Julia, though, too, which is, something you've got to consider with it as well. And that does put her in the number 8 slot in my rankings. But, Clark, who do you have?
Well, if you watched the Tuesday night show, you heard me say, is that a Mercedes? Oh, no, it's just a Lexus. About Lexus King. This time at number 8, it is a Mercedes. It's not a Lexus. It's Mercedes Moné, TBS champ. I mean, come on, what more can you say about her? The artist formerly known as Sasha Banks. She's that good. She's always been that good. A mainstay on lists like this, deservedly so. One of the best workers in the business. And yep, I've got Mercedes Moné at number 8.
An absolutely excellent choice. But Anthony, who do you have in that 8 slot?
Somebody new on my list, and the only other, I have 2 people on my list that are not champions, and this is one of them. Kevin Owens. He's been on a tear, obviously one of the most compelling stories going on right now on, why he's turning on Cody and Randy. So I had to include him.
Story is not meant to matter in
Yeah,
this.
well, it matters to me.
Oh my, we're breaking the rules. Well, the Instagram comments will give their thoughts anyway, like they will to all of us. All our lists will be absolutely slaughtered by the comment section. But anyway, what about you, Kobe? Who do you have at number 8?
I have number 8, and it's someone who probably is going to be a little bit divisive. But if I'm looking at, even if I'm looking at a span of the next few months and I'm looking at what he's done, it's a lot of nothing because he's only had 2 wins because he took some time off during the summer, and of course he deserves some time off. But he is the reigning world champion of AEW. I do have Jon Moxley at number 8 because he's only had a win over Darby Allin.
That's fair.
He's only had a win over Bryan Danielson. If I see a lot of other people with bigger wins than that and more wins. If we're talking, if this is becoming a statistic battle, Jon Moxley isn't that high up.
Fair enough. I mean,
on
again,
top right now.
An easy argument to make there, Kobe. I mean, it depends again how you view this, because if you're Dana White, you're probably thinking the last 5 years, and Jon Moxley's right up there. But in reality, when we are only looking at it in the last few months, that is a fantastic point indeed. Moxley, 2 big wins, but still only 2 wins for the AEW champion since he has returned. That then brings us on to number 7, because I need to be really careful, right? Because I have last month's list for me right beneath my current one, and I've almost read out last month's twice now, but you just brought her up, Clark. Mercedes Moné in at number 7 for me. I know it's controversial. I have her above Roxanne, but again, the caliber of opponent, I believe, is higher than who Roxanne has faced. Also, 11 for 11 this year, Mercedes Moné, not lost in any match type in the year of 2024. That has to be something which is considered. But Clark, who do you have in the number 7?
I got the NXT World Champion. Whoop that Trick Williams. Trick Willie, my last NXT entry on the list, but absolutely at 7. Still a mainstay.
That is a great choice indeed. I mean, did you have Trick? You did not have Trick in your
I
one
didn't
last month.
because he was not the champion, but I did have him on my original list when
Yeah,
he
I mean,
was is during his
do I
first
have
run.
the one from, let's see.
I- He's been
You
on some
had
lists.
you had him at number 10 3 months ago, and
There
you
you go.
had him at number 5 4 months ago. So that's a little bit of statistics for the regular viewers here. Anthony Manzano says his number 8 is Obafemi, his number 7 is Nick Nemeth, his number 6 is Bron Breakker, his number 5 is Rhea, his number 4 is Gunther, his number 3 is Swerve, and his number 2 is Seth, and his number 1 is still Roman Reigns. I mean, that is certainly a controversial one. But Anthony, I'll go to you next. Who do you have at number 7?
I have Roxanne Perez, the dominant
Nice.
women's champion of NXT. I think she's had a great year. She's beaten Julia. She's beaten Jordan Grace, who was the reigning Knockouts champion of TNA, and probably the most dominant women's champion in NXT history, other than Asuka, and probably the best heel women's champion that there's been on that brand.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, her reign has been dominant, to your point. It absolutely has been. So a great shout, no doubt about it. But Coby, what about you?
So this is where things are going to get interesting. Of course, we're all going to mainly say WWE names or AEW names. This is probably my one and only outside of the box name that isn't in either company, but it is the man who went through one of the grueling summer tournaments of pro wrestling, and that is the G1 Climax. And he recently made a bit of history and said, nah, I don't care about main eventing the Tokyo Dome. I just want to win this title. And he took it to King of Pro Wrestling, and Zack Sabre Jr. defeated Tetsuya Naito. It is Zack Sabre Jr., the G1 winner as well as the current IWGP World Champion. He is on a roll right now, and he recently defeated Sonata, and I expect him to ride that belt way past the Tokyo Dome this year, or upcoming next year.
I certainly hope you're right, Coby. I mean, Zack Sabre Jr. is a heck of a talent, no doubt about him. And perhaps not the last time we will hear his name today. But before we do, let me go and hit my number 6. Because I have in at number 6 somebody who Anthony Manzano has at number 1. And that is the Tribal Chief, the head of the table. Or at least in my opinion, the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns. We can't ignore his historic reign. We absolutely cannot. Sure, he's not been that active over the last few months, and that is why he has dropped down to 6, right? But nobody in decades of professional wrestling has been as dominant as he was for 3 years. And his dominance, I mean, it makes it hard to knock him down this ranking too quickly. In at number 6 still for me. He is falling slowly, right? But he did get that tag win with Cody, which just about saves him dropping to 7th this month. If he doesn't have a singles win in the next month, I'm certain he probably will be dropping a little bit lower. But Clark, who do you have?
I've got at 6 a good one here. I've got the AEW Women's World Champion Mariah May. And I think it's deserved. She's had the year of her career, no doubt about it. And high on the list at 6. This is a good spot. And I think the ascension can continue when it comes to climbing the rankings on my pound for pound list, because there's a lot in the crosshairs and a lot more victories to pick up. So as we continue to do these lists, I can see Mariah climbing closer to that, top 3 spot potentially.
Absolutely. I could see that. She is having an absolute dominant reign. There's no doubt about it. She, I mean, like I said earlier as well, she won the Owen in the build-up as well. So it wasn't like she just got a title shot and won it.
Right.
She earned her way to get there. She beat a lot of opponents on her way to the top, and now she is there. Well, she is doing that title justice. But what about you, Anthony? Who do you have in the number 6 slot?
Speaking of dominant reigns, I got to go with the queen, the WWE Women's Champion, Nia Jax, having the run of her career. Dominant, and it really is the best run of her entire career.
Undoubtedly, I have to agree with you on that one. Nia Jax in at number 6 for Anthony. I mean, if I go back to your list from last month, Anthony, Nia Jax was number 8 then, so she is up 2 places this month. Very good as well, very deserved. Of course, after defeating Bayley. Was it Bayley or Naomi who she defeated at the pay-per-view?
Bailey.
Bailey, it was
Yeah.
Bailey. There's so many pay-per-views now, so many matches.
Yeah.
I'm getting confused in my own head, but it was a great performance, no doubt about it. And of course, who alongside Candice LeRae got a big win in that tag match this past week on SmackDown as well. But who do you have, Kobe, in at number 6?
I think this is probably someone that not many others on this panel are going to think about. And I mean, it's someone who is a current champion. It's someone who's been holding the title for multiple months already. And it's someone who won it at SummerSlam. And I think this is someone who has marquee wins over Ludwig Kaiser, over, not, I was going to say Giovanni Vinci, no, over Ludwig Kaiser, over Andrade, over Carmelo Hayes, and especially Logan Paul. It's LA Knight, the current United States champion. He's had that title for more than a couple months. I think he's approaching, or no, I think he's about 70 days maybe. But he's a current champion and he's getting those wins, and I don't think it's stopping anytime soon. He has a lot of momentum. That road before as well. Obviously, I think the only match he lost was against AJ Styles in like April, and then the Money in the Bank. But you can't really count a multi-man ladder match if you want to say so. But LA Knight, he deserves to be on this list. He has the wins. He has a title reign that's been going on for longer than someone like Braun Breaker or Jay Uso. But exactly, yeah. I think he deserves to be on the spot. Obviously not as high because he's not that, I don't want to say not that important, but he's not at that type of a rank, but he does deserve to be on this list.
Fair
and he
point.
certainly had a longer reign than someone like Moxley.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean that is true as well. I mean, personally, I was going back and forth about whether or not I was going to include LA Knight myself. Almost had him at number 10, but Mariah may just about beat him to it just because of the build-up, the amount of matches she's had, and etc., etc., etc. But now that does bring me to number 5. But before we get on to number 5, I actually want to talk to you guys about something. I want to talk to you guys about Demand Progress Plus, right? Because we're only 1 week away now from their next chapter, and it is going to be a stacked one indeed. But if you guys don't know what Demand Progress is, it's basically Progress Wrestling's subscription service, right? And it's got every Progress Wrestling event ever on it, plus Defy Wrestling events, plus TNT Extreme Wrestling events as well. It is a great streaming service, very user-friendly. I say it all the time, but it's true. I genuinely think it's the best professional wrestling streaming service, right? Because we know WWE is now going to Netflix and all this for a purely professional wrestling streaming service. I think Demand Progress Plus beats any of them, right? But they've given us an exclusive code for our listeners to use, and that is Watch Progress 1 to get 50% off your first month on Demand Progress Plus, the home of Progress, Defy, and more. Seriously, guys, check it out. But now let's move straight back into the pound for pound rankings once again, because in at number 5 now, I have somebody who's up 2 places, right? And last time they were in at number 7, and they were in at number 7 for winning a grueling month-long G1 Climax tournament. Well, since that has happened, they've not only won the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, but they've also successfully defended it once as well. Of course, I'm talking about Zack Sabre Jr. This guy has just been on such a good run this past year. No doubt about it. Up 2 places in a number 5 on my pound for pound ranking this month. Clark, who do you have in your 5 slot?
That is a great pick, but I've got one, and Anthony broke it down perfectly in his number 6 slot. It's Nia Jax. Best run of her career, no doubt about it, despite that loss to Naomi. Doesn't matter. Starts my top 5, no question. She's been the best she's ever been. And we always knew the potential was there, but it is so cool to see her deliver upon it the way she has this year, and deservedly so at the 5 spot.
A great shout, absolutely. Nia Jax has been on a heck of a run. But Anthony, who do you have in at number 5?
This person I think is making a debut on my list. It would have to be the king of Yeet himself, Jey Uso, the Intercontinental Champion. He's having, without a doubt, the best solo run of his career. The crowd's strongly behind him, and he's a potential future world champion.
I hope you're right, because somebody, I think it was Rana in the chat the other day, said about, him being this generation's Jeff Hardy, essentially, right? Really breaking out from a tag team and being somebody who the kids just absolutely love. And I don't think I realized quite how over he was. Sure, there was a lot of yeet chants and all this, but there's a lot of chants and all of that. But I didn't realize that until I saw that he was like just completely dominating Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, everybody else in the merchandise sales. I mean, nobody's been able to get anywhere near him other than CM Punk in recent months. I mean, it is absolutely crazy how much merch he is moving right now. But Kobe, who do you have in at number 5?
Number 5, this is someone that's already been mentioned before by one of us, and I think it's someone who stands here and I don't want to say deserves a high spot, but she does. She's someone who is sitting here as a double champion, and there's not a lot of people who can say that right now. I mean, there's one in Stardom, but it's also not 2 singles championships. She has a singles and a tag. This is 2 singles championships. And my number 5 is, like you said, 11-0 in this calendar year. She's the current New Japan Strong New Japan Strong Women's Champion and the TBS Champion. It's Mercedes Moné. She's on top of the world with 2 belts.
An exceptional shout, Kobe. Seriously, I mean, she's having, it's the year of Monet. She said that would be the case, but it absolutely has been a fantastic pick at number 5. There's a couple of months left of 2024. Flipping heck, I'm getting old. But it's, she could push further into that top 3 slots. I definitely think so. But not Anthony. I'm just losing my marbles here.
I mean, I could give my number 4 if you want me to. But
did you want him to skip the line?
Yeah.
What? In at number 4, I'm going to annoy you slightly, Kobe, because he's somebody who's, logic you broke down a little bit earlier about why they weren't higher on your list. Well, at my list, we are going to have the AEW champion, and the new AEW champion re-entering my list, Jon Moxley. Now, if you guys remember a few months ago, despite not being a champion, Jon Moxley was actually on my list. And the reason for that at the time was the fact that, like, in the last, I think it's like 2 years, the guy's lost like just a couple of singles matches. It is absolutely crazy, the run that he's been on. Obviously, he then dropped the world champ, the New Japan Pro Wrestling IWGP World Championship, but he's come back. He defeated Darby Allin, who was the number 1 contender, right? That guy was ranked number 1 in the AEW rankings. Jon Moxley came in, he beat him, he then went on, and he potentially retired Bryan Danielson. That means a lot to me. That holds a lot of weight. And his record over the past 2 years, that also holds a lot of weight. So in at number 4, a re-entry for Jon Moxley on my list. But what about you, Clark?
Yeah, for me at number 4, I would say take your belts and put them in a duffel bag and then strap it to your red wagon, because I've also got Jon Moxley at 4 on my list. Absolutely deserved. The guy retired Bryan Danielson. He's the AEW World Champion. What more can you say? And like you said, hasn't lost in a long time. Doesn't do it often.
Absolutely. Literally, the Naito loss, I think, is the only loss in quite a while. Also, Clark, you said at the beginning that I think would be very angry at your list. I'm going to be honest with you. So far, I think it's actually really, really fair. Actually,
Thank you. It's not over
I can
yet.
see it. Yeah, well, I'm sure you'll manage to, mess it up in the final 3.
I appreciate you saying that now before it gets ugly.
But
you heard it here first, folks. It's gonna get ugly.
It's the calm before the storm.
I'm just saying.
God. Anthony, what about you? Who do you have at number 4?
Well, I'm going to make it 3 in a row. I got Jon Moxley, man of retired Danielson,
awesome.
And, the reigning AEW World Champion, and the latest guy trying to take over the company.
There's about 5 of those a week. And by 5, I mean 5 different factions. But yeah, how about that one, Kobe? We've all disagreed. We've all managed to find a way to put him up the list, despite your very convincing argument earlier on, which I'm not going to lie, made me feel a little bit nervous about having him so high, because it was a good point. But Soul says that he's got a piece of Impact Wrestling history, which he's going to show on the next daily. Meanwhile, he's got Ryback in at number 1 because he's undefeated since like forever and is still an active wrestler. I mean, does it count?
No, he's not active. He's not active.
I thought Kenny
Nobody
Omega was
pays
that
him
one.
to wrestle.
I mean, listen.
Nobody pays Ryback to wrestle.
I thought he had Kenny Omega.
if this was strictly based on how many polls somebody puts up to have the fans decide whether or not to work somewhere or
Put it on
retire,
the poll.
then yes, he is number one without a doubt.
I would
What
have
about
said
you?
one of CM Punk's biggest haters too. I mean, if that's
He-
that's the criteria.
No, I actually
yeah,
think
you
they're
say that.
secretly
Should-
friends.
should-
I think
so-
that's all a gag.
So should we
No.
thank Ryback, because his hate easily fueled one of the greatest rivalries of the year in Punk McIntyre with that Hell in a Cell match? Thank you, Ryback.
He did book that
Kobe.
himself, from what I've heard.
Who do you have at number 4?
Well, I'm not going to make history and put John Moxley at 4 again. No, it's someone who's really had a rise. I mean, obviously, he started the year off having Will Ospreay's debut match at Revolution as a member of the AEW roster, and it's someone who has sit there and taken the wrestling world by storm with his performance in the G1. We talk about wins and losses. He didn't win every single match, but he also picked up a lot of marquee wins and probably had one of the most consistent performances in that tournament. But it's also someone who then went on to go defeat Will Ospreay for the International World Championship. Also going on to beat Mike Bailey last night in one of the best matches of the year. As well, probably going to beat Josh Alexander tonight. Maybe. But it is Konosuke Takeshita. He's had a rise in the last 4 months. He undoubtedly deserves this spot. He's not one of the most important champions in AEW, but he absolutely is important if we look at the last 4 months with a spotlight.
Undoubtedly, Kobe, a great shout for Takeshita, no doubt about it. An easy argument to make. For me, in at number 3 now, moving up into the top 3, I have up 3 places the WWE Women's Champion, Nia Jax. I mean, she has just destroyed that entire division pretty much, right? She won Queen of the Ring. She did so dominantly. She's become champion. Of course, she did lose to Naomi. But she's also, beaten Naomi on a few occasions too, or at least in multi-man matches, whatever, right? She's done it. Nia Jax, she's looking more dominant than ever, more believable than ever, and I genuinely believe she deserves a spot in the top 3, so she is in at number 3 for me. Clark, what about you?
I hate it when you make me have to do this. It happens basically once a show when we do these ones, but at number 3, I've got Cody Rhodes, and that's all I have to say about that.
I didn't even have time to write it down.
Yeah,
Anthony, what about you? Who do you have at 3?
I have the King of the Ring, the WWE World Heavyweight Champion, Gunther. Obviously, he's had a phenomenal year, the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion. And, he, just within the past few weeks, he's picked fights with 2 retired Hall of Famers and Bret Hart and Goldberg. And so that easily gets him on the list.
A great shout once again, but what about you, Kobe?
I think this is the tough one because I don't want to say everyone else put her lower, but everyone else did. But this is someone who I definitely believe is the MVP of women's wrestling right now. She is the most valuable player. And I think that is someone who's lost 1 match in this calendar year. That's Roxanne Perez. She has the longest reign. She has the longest reign right now of any of the top women's champions. I'm sure there are other places in the world, but she is on the highest mark. Of course, she said she beat Julia, but she's been purely undefeated. She's been on the run of her career. Her stock is spiking high up, and I think she is the MVP of women's wrestling right now, and it's Roxanne Perez.
Another great shout. We spoke about this in the chat earlier, by the way, as well, guys, before this show, right? Because for the people not on the show at Wrestling Republic, I spoke to them about Roxanne, and they were like, why is Roxanne not higher up on your list? And my point was, well, you can win a lot of matches, right? Let's say you're a League 2 football team. You can win a lot of matches in League 2. You can then get promoted to the League 1, then the Championship, then the Premier League. And then you could get thrashed and get relegated. When you're not against a top caliber opponent, does it mean as much? Or perhaps the NXT roster are on that level. That is depending how you interpret it once again. But Kobe,
best women's division in wrestling. Ask me, Shad and Drizzy every Tuesday night, baby.
Look at the names: Lyra Valkyria, Jordan Grace, Julia. There's Chelsea Green.
To be
Nikita
fair,
Lyons.
on the main roster.
those three are hard
There's
to
a
argue.
lot in there are high up names, but she's also elevated Jada Parker, Thea Hale.
Now, that doesn't mean
Uh,
anything in a kayfabe.
Lola
background.
Kalani Jordan.
Does it not?
No,
No,
not
she's
elevate. It's that story. That's not results elevating
That's not-
somebody. It's based on pure black and white results. But
Yeah, that's all.
it does-
That's all
Yeah.
Well, that's not what this is about. This is about
Come
Hey,
on.
you have your
It's a
That's
list.
what
business.
We have ours.
Yeah.
Ben.
UFC's pound for pound's about. It's about
Yeah.
purely black. This isn't a top 10
Yeah, and
wrestler
the
of the year. This
UFC's
is
pound
black
for
and
pound
white.
is more
Pound for pound.
subjective than ours.
Yeah.
I know, see, fair it is. But it's not, it's about just purely kayfabe and results. But even still, Kobe, to your point, Roxanne Perez has defeated. I mean, you mentioned Julia, Jordan Grace,
Lyra Valkyria,
and
Jordan Grace.
Lyra Valkyria as well. I mean,
Chelsea
those are
Green.
three big names. Chelsea Green
names.
too. And a lot of defenses. So you could easily make that argument, no doubt about it. But now that does bring us on to number 2. And I have a mover. In at number 2, I have somebody down one place. And that is Mr. Cody Rhodes. I mean, I don't think he's necessarily done anything wrong the last month, right? He got a win. He got a win in a tag match. But I think somebody else is getting more wins. And has been a bit more active than him in singles competition, which will boost them up. But, Clark, what about you? Who do you have in the number 2 slot?
I've also got somebody down a spot. At number 2, I've got the Ring Gunther or whatever. Is that how they say it? I've got Gunther. He's the world champion. He's been great all year. A lot of wins. And yeah, I've got Gunther at 2. Down a spot.
Wow. Now I'm really interested who you have at number 1. You said it'll be controversial. I really think it is. I mean, actually, I really don't know who you do have. We'll have to get onto that in a minute. Anthony, what about you?
I got the original tribal chief, Roman Reigns, the most dominant champion in the decades. Obviously, he hasn't missed a step since he's come back, and he's in easily the biggest storyline that there's been in the past 4 years. So, yeah.
Undoubtedly. I mean, like I said earlier on, pretty much undefeated for 3 years, right? One pin in like 3.5 years. Well, sorry, not one pin in 3.5 years. One pin.
No,
Sorry, two pins
Two.
in
Yeah.
4.5 years. I mean, that is massively impressive.
Jay and Cody.
Yeah, that is massively impressive indeed. Kobe, what about you? Who do you have in at number 2?
Number 2, obviously this might spoil number 1, but at number 2, I do have Cody Rhodes, and it's someone who, I mean, I don't want to say has taken a step back or anything, but there's been, even if I look at the last month, not last month, the last few months since WrestleMania, I wouldn't necessarily say Cody's giving everything he's got for this many months. There's kind of been he's had a okay rivalry with Logan Paul, and then they kind of he also got pinned by Solo Sikoa, but he also had several matches with Solo Sikoa, match with Kevin Owens, and obviously just a tag match at Bad Blood. But I mean, I wouldn't say he's the most important world champion, but he is the most important from a business standpoint. But pound for pound, I don't think he's number 1.
Well, I absolutely do agree with you there, Kobe, and I have a feeling I'm going to agree with you on number 1 as well, because in at number 1, I have the Ring General, I have the World Heavyweight Champion, this year's King of the Ring, Gunther. This guy has taken, like Roman Reigns, only really one loss since in the last few years, and that was, of course, to Sami Zayn. But he recently has avenged that loss. He's got a win back. So that kind of, in my eyes, knocks that off the record. Gunther, number 1 for me. Easy, no-brainer. Clark, I want to know who this name is you have.
Can we have Clark last? Can we have
You
Clark
know what?
last?
Let's do that.
I'm fine with
Let's
that.
have Clark last.
I like-
He's gonna set the world on fire. Let's have Clark as the last number 1.
Let's like Hangman Page, let's end the show with flames in the background. Kobe, I'll actually go to you then. I have a feeling you might be agreeing with me.
I mean, I do. It is Gunther. It's someone who, like you said, one loss in how many years? He had that tremendous championship reign with the IC title. I mean, if we look at the title designs, we know the white strap is with it. We identify that with the Miz. This new title design with the black strap and the rounder plate, this is Gunther's design. And keep in mind, he's the world heavyweight champion. He beat Damian Priest. He has 2 victories over the man we call the Viper, Mr. Randy Orton. He also just defeated Sami Zayn, and he's also beating old folks on the mic, destroying Bret Hart on the mic, and making Goldberg ready to unretire. I mean, it's great. I think Gunther's at a point where if I said a year ago he'd be on top on all cylinders, especially with his promo work, I'd be a little shocked, but he's delivered everything. It took them 2 weeks to kind of sell Damian Priest and Gunther when it was just like, oh, this is the King of the Ring winner getting his title shot. No, they sold us in 2 weeks. And
yeah,
it's not too hard to do that, but I think, it's Gunther. It's Gunther. He's on the top of his game, and I do, like I said, I've kind of mentioned the future a bit. I do think he's beating Cody Rhodes, Crown Jewel champion. I do think he's beating Cody Rhodes.
What about you, Anthony? Who do you have in at number 1?
I have Cody, 6 months in the top spot in the biggest company in the world, still over with the crowd. And again, hottest storylines. I'm sorry, that matters to me.
Not in a pound for pound, it doesn't. That's the ideology behind a pound for pound. But anyway,
wasn't on the last ones. The last ones
was. Every one I've sent that message. I've copy and pasted it every time.
No.
But anyway, Clark, I want to know who it is you have in at number 1, because I feel like you are about to set this world on fire.
I mean, so if you know me, you know I like to break rules, right? I've never seen a keep off grass sign where I didn't walk on the lawn. I'm just saying, I don't care what anybody's list says. John Jones is the best fighter in the world right now, no matter what the UFC pound for pound rankings say. And I believe the exact same when it comes to pro wrestling. The biggest mover, the biggest shaker, the most important person in all of professional wrestling, and number 1 pound for pound is that original tribal chief. Get your ones up. It's Roman Reigns. And there's no debate about it. If he is active, he's the most important person in professional wrestling. He's the most effective person in professional wrestling. And he's number 1, and he deserves to be number 1. I've had him at 10. He's been on and off the list. Since we've been doing the list, he hasn't been champion. He's the first time I've ever put a non-champion in the top 5. He's involved in, speaking of storylines, the most important storyline in professional wrestling. He's the only one of the 3 involved in it that are the most important. The Rock, Cody Rhodes, and Roman Reigns not carrying a title because he doesn't even need to. It doesn't matter. The guy is that big of a deal. It is Roman Reigns at 1 all the way. Get the ones up. The original tribal chief.
The thing is, Clark, I wouldn't even say it's controversial, apart from the fact that last month he wasn't on your list.
I know. It's my favorite thing that I did. I literally made like a completely fair list and was like, oh, I'm out of people. I only have 9. I was like, Roman's 1. It's got to be Roman.
The comments are going to murder each and every one of us, guys.
Welcome to my brain.
We're all getting burned alive tonight, but on that note, thank you guys so much.
I made a 9-person list and was like, I need one more. Dang it.
I mean, at least he didn't whip out the Rock. I was worried he would whip out the Rock.
About going Rock.
I honestly thought he was
considered going Rock. I'm like, he's undefeated on the year.
I honestly thought you were going Hangman when you said burn the house down.
I thought he was going to go MJF. But anyway, thank you, Clark. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Coby. And thank you, most importantly, to everybody who's watching, commented along. We really do appreciate it. We will be back same time, same place tomorrow for Mailbag Monday. Make sure you guys submit your questions via our Instagram stories so we can answer your questions. Right, see you guys then. Bye.